When we need to prepare for a competitive event, our go-to company is the Army Painter.
Thanks to their complete range of paints, spray cans, and gaming tools, we're able to complete our new armies and units in no time.
When we need to elevate the quality of our models and terrain, the Army Painter is always our first choice.
You may not know this, but the Army Painter has sponsored more competitive events than any other hobby company.
Tournament and wargaming is in their DNA.
Visit thearmypainter.com to learn more about their amazing products.
And use promo code AW Paints for a 5% discount from your Army Painter purchases.
What are you waiting for? Discover the best way to prepare your models for events with the Army Painter today.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Art of War stream. This is our Thursday show in which we pick a cool, interesting topic and talk about it. But in addition, we'll also answer your questions. Anybody who super chats, we will get through all of those. So if you do have any questions, you want us to check out certain lists, give our opinions on various things, please do send a super chat and we'd be happy to answer them. But this is going to be talking about some of the most interesting lists from the World Team Championships, which is kind of the 40K Olympics. It's got all the different nations. And this one has even more nations than previously. There's a lot of new nations and a lot of new players going there.
Absolutely. So we are going to be covering some of the most interesting lists from the WTC. There are 40 countries in attendance this year, which is higher than they've ever had before. This is an 8-person team event. And if you're unfamiliar with the WTC, all 40 countries are sending what is theoretically some of their best players to compete for the World Team title. This is where you see a lot of top players from countries all around the world, all putting in their best effort. Sometimes the lists from WTC last for an entire year because you'll see that these lists are usually so well thought out, so well designed that they're kept secret until WTC comes out. And then after WTC comes out, they can literally redefine what you can do with a faction.
Absolutely. And then other times, because it's a team event, a lot of things become more viable because maybe that one or two hard counters that exists in the broader meta, you're not going to be playing against it. Yeah. And so an idea or concept you otherwise wouldn't see gets to really kind of flourish in this type of environment.
Absolutely.
So before we dive into the list here, if you're joining us, please do give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends about us. All of that massively helps us grow. In addition, leave a comment below letting us know what you think of the WTC list. What are you most excited to see? And overall, just how you're feeling about Pariah Nexus in general. We love to hear your comments and your feedback. And if you want more content from us, seeing a variety of top-level lists in action, go ahead and head over to thewarroom.vhx.tv. There's a lot of content, including 3 battle reports every week, Jack Theory. We've got our new mission series for all the Leviathan mission, or not Leviathan, the Pariah Nexus missions going on right now. So check that out. There's a 3-day free trial. You'll also get access to our awesome app. So hope to see you joining our wonderful community and our Discord.
Absolutely. And if you're even more excited about the WTC, if you want some more WTC content, we can promise that there will be a little bit of extra WTC content as we get closer and after the event, coming from Nick and myself, as we'll both be attending.
Absolutely. All right. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump over here to our kind of breakdown of the different factions and which countries are bringing them. So you can see the list of nations all here. This is provided by StatCheck. They did a full breakdown of all the different countries and which armies that they're bringing. So you can see, starting on the left-hand side here, every single team brought Space Marines. And if you're one of those people who goes on Reddit and is like, Space Marines aren't good, their Codex win rate is low, here's your evidence. False. No. False. Straight up false. Because Space Marines don't have any good data. No. They do.
Space Marines.
One of the strongest armies in the game, and by this metric, every country agreed that they were one of the 8 best armies out there. Now, of course, it is a lot of supplements and additional rules. So you don't see, I think it's one Iron Storm. Is it one Iron Storm?
There's only one Iron Storm. I believe it was brought by Austria. And it's actually an Imperial Fist Iron Storm because he's not taking any chapter characters. So respect to the one Imperial Fist player.
Exactly. So you have that, and then you have one Ultramarines Gladius Task Force, but otherwise it's Dark Angels, Space Wolves, Black Templars, Blood Angels, all the classics that you see. But when you get additional rules on the baseline of Space Marines, it's pretty darn good.
Yeah, it really is. And Blood Angels is by far the most taken chapter here. More than half the Space Marines in attendance are Sons of Sanguinius. But after that, it does diversify quite a bit. I think there's 8 Dark Angel players. There's about 4 or 5 Space Wolves, a couple Black Templars, rounded out with an Ultramarine here, an Imperial Fist there, and you get an even 40. Other than the fact that everyone took Space Marines, though, there is actually quite a lot of diversity in some of these, in what is being taken.
Yeah, there's a handful of Wolf Jail. There's some Crusader spam that we'll get to. There's a Space Marines have a depth of builds, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, and actually my favorite stat, just to emphasize the diversity of the meta in Prime Nexus, is that if you look at the top 2 teams from last year, the United States and Poland, they each brought eight army rosters, because that's what you do. There are 2 codexes shared in between them. So for that, I'm counting Space Marines differently because it's Space Wolves and Dark Angels. But other than the fact that they took different Marine chapters, those 2 teams only shared 2 factions. And so when theoretically the 2 top teams at an event can have such wildly different comps, that means that there's a lot of viable options. And speaking from the USA side, the 8 that we took are not because we didn't think because we thought there were only 8 good armies. There's so many good armies in Prime Nexus, and so you can see that in the diversity of lists taken throughout some of the top teams of the event, which I think is wonderful to see for the meta.
Yeah, I mean, this is the healthiest meta we've had in forever.
yeah, years plural. I think this is definitely a great time to be rolling dice.
Then we got 30. Next up is Thousand Suns. 32 teams took Thousand Suns, which is the vast majority.
It didn't seem to take that nerf too harshly, it turns out.
Yeah, because Thousand Suns are one of the armies that hated indirect fire. Indirect fire gets nerfed. They have a couple tough matchups, but not too many. They flourish in a team's environment, absolutely. And in addition to that, I think some of the teams that didn't bring Thousand Suns is not because they didn't want to bring Thousand Suns, although I don't know this for sure, but Thousand Suns do require a player that has a good amount of reps. Yep. So if you don't have access to a Thousand Suns player, or your Thousand Suns player, can't travel for whatever reason, that's when you might not bring it.
If you look at these stats, you'll notice that these countries are sorted by the tiers in which they are, which is based on how well they've done in the past or if they're new to the event. Of the tier 1, 2, and 3 teams, which is theoretically the top 30 teams of the event, 28 of them brought Thousand Suns. So you can tell that the top teams all believe that Thousand Suns is one of the best armies to bring.
Yep, and I would agree with that.
I would as well. Next up is Sisters. This makes perfect sense. Brand new codex. They've been doing very well. They've been competing at events. They're very powerful. We've got plenty of games with the new Sisters Codex on our channel as well, showing how powerful they are.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, our own Nick Nanavati is one of these boxes here. 29 Sisters lists out of 40. Pretty strong. Not quite as widespread as T-Suns, but close.
Very close, very close. And not too surprising. I honestly thought Sisters would be number 2 behind Marines, but not surprised to see Thousand Suns ahead. And all but 2 lists here are Bringers of Flame. 1 Hollowed Martyrs, 1 Penitent Host. Everybody else is, I'm going to advance and kill you with my guns.
It's a strong plan.
Yeah,
Fast Guns is one of those archetypes that has been good at Warhammer for several editions in a row. I think 10, if I can recall correctly. It's a really solid list concept to bring. I'm not shocked that we're seeing it everywhere.
Next up is Grey Knights with 26. Honestly, so is 28? No, 28, it's 28. Yeah. That is quite surprising to me, honestly, because Grey Knights have suffered successive nerfs. And the interesting thing about the Grey Knight list in here is that they're not all Dread Knight spam. There's a 30 Terminator build, there's Librarians and 5-man Terminators, there's a mix of Dread Knights and Terminators. It's actually a pretty diverse internal meta for Grey Knights. And 28 teams thought that they were one of the best 4 factions to bring, which is quite interesting.
And that's surprising to me that we saw the diversity, because as a non-Grey Knight player myself, and I know you have a lot more experience playing them than I do, I kind of stereotype Grey Knights as like, oh yeah, Codex Dread Knights, next. Which is a good thing to be, but we do see that several top teams took lists with no or few Dread Knights. Germany only has 2 Dread Knights. England has 0. Poland doesn't actually have that many Dread Knights. No, I think Poland actually is a good number. I don't remember exactly how many each team brought, but there are 6 Dread Knight lists and there are 0 Dread Knight lists. And clearly they still put up good results for everyone in practice, enough to make a WTC team.
Yeah.
Because nothing makes a roster without being thoroughly practiced. There are no speculative lists at WTC.
Yeah, and I think Grey Knights are one of those armies where, because Mist of Deimos is such a powerful stratagem, it can just stress an opponent. Like, somebody's going to start making mistakes at some point against the pressure that the Grey Knight trickery puts on. And they also just play Prime Nexus missions pretty good because they're so mobile.
They really do.
And you see that. You're going to see it in the next faction, which is Necrons with 26. Hypercrypt is all over the place. So 2 of the most mobile, teleporty, shenanigan armies are very much seen as critical in this environment.
Yeah. And funny enough, Team USA did not bring either of those. No,
Team USA does not like
no
tricks.
Grey Knights or
Confirmed.
Necrons. I like tricks.
You like raw power, John. Get out of
I
here.
also like raw power. I played Vanguard. I like both. Yeah, I mean, going down the line, it's a lot of what you'd expect. Everything's slowly, less and less as we go right on the graph here. The one that surprised me the most was that Tyranids were as low as they were, which is 18. 18 out of 40 teams brought Tyranids, so just below half. I frankly would have expected Tyranids to be on more than half of the teams.
Do you think it's the case where people had undervalued Tyranids previously before Pariah Nexus and so just weren't able to get to grips with them? Because Pariah Nexus released, like a month before the list deadline?
Yeah, give or take.
So you get Pariah Nexus, you get all the changes, the balance status slate, everything, and then you have to decide within that first couple weeks, like, okay, these are the factions we want to test. Here, let's get some reps with all of them. And it's possible that because Tyranids were undervalued, nobody had a basic foundation or like an advanced foundation already that they could build on.
I think that's it. And I think it's because Tyranids are, even though they are much improved, Tyranids, in my opinion, are not a great army to pick up quickly. I think Tyranids are very strong. I love my Tyranids. I when we did our tier list, I put them as one of the 5 best armies in the game because I genuinely believe that. But Tyranids are an army you really want to have reps with. And if you don't have a player who is actively experienced with Tyranids, I can understand being hesitant to pivot in the last 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I get it. And even then, the strengths of Tyranids are not just like things you put in a calculator. The strengths of Tyranids are on the table. So you have to get the games to really appreciate the strength of Tyranids. And if you have someone who doesn't have all the reps, it would take you a good number of reps to get a good grasp of where Tyranids are. And so that's my guess on what happened there. I thought there would be more of them, but yeah, I can see why people didn't.
Well, we got a Tyranid question here from Ryan G. Thanks so much for the super chat, Ryan. Any Assimilation Swarm Tyranids? I feel like it's the dark horse detachment. That and almost no one has reps into it.
I
don't believe
there are
that.
no Assimilation Swarm. So funny enough, I actually think on number of detachments taken, I think Tyranids are only second to Space Marines. And that's because 4 of the 6 Tyranid detachments are found at WTC, and all of the ones that are found multiple times, I believe. So there's I think 3 Crusher, 4 Invasion Fleet, 8 or 9 Vanguard Onslaught, I think 3 Synaptic Nexus, maybe 4. But no Assimilation Swarm. I do agree Assimilation Swarm is a bit of a dark horse. I still think Assimilation Swarm is not quite as good as some of these attachments that were taken, but I think Tyranids are in that wonderful, envious spot of almost all of their detachments have real, legitimate, viable play right now.
Which is really
an incredible
great place
yeah.
to be.
Honestly, I think Tyranids are the healthiest army in the game right now because it's so diverse. They're not overpowered. Their win rate's not crazy, but there's so many play options. Oh, I love my Tyranids. We're about to change the topic of this.
And then we have Robin Roberts here with his $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Robin. How many GSC and why?
Let's skip to the end, shall we? One army did not make the cut.
Only one.
That far right column with
GSC.
0 check marks is Genestealer Cult. There were no Genestealer Cult armies taken to WTC, not a single one. It's unfortunate because obviously, in a healthy meta as we're believing Pariah Nexus to be, you would like to see every army get represented, but it seems that the countries at WTC all have a consensus on Genestealer Cult.
Yeah, and the other thing is the Codex, even if the Codex had more things going on, it still came out very recently.
Yeah.
So even if you how many reps are you going to get to really master a brand new Codex? That can be tough.
I think it would have to be obvious because we saw that Sisters and GSC
Sisters was
came out
obvious
at the same time. Sisters is obvious, and you can see there are a lot of Sisters players. Genestealer Cult, the strengths are less obvious and harder to find and harder to execute when you find them. And with any luck, this will indicate that 2 Games Workshop, Genestealer Cult could use a little love tap or 2.
Now, last year, there was no admech, I believe. Was that the faction that was left out?
No, there was one.
There was
admech.
one? Was there any faction left out last year?
I believe in Index Hammer, there was not a faction that was left out.
Okay. So yeah, it's pretty rare to not have one of the factions, especially with an expanded amount of teams. But yeah, I mean, admech gets 6 here with their update, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Custodes definitely dropped from last year.
Yeah. One of the things that I like is that even though, like, other than Gene Starkalt, sadly not taken, every army, even the ones that were not taken often, every army was taken by a tier 1 nation. So even the lower popularity armies like Chaos Demons, Imperial Knights, Custodes, which are an admech, those are the rest of the bottom 5 in numbers taken, all of those were taken by at least one tier 1 nation, which means a very good WTC team believes that this army is legitimately playable. And that's wonderful because that means that every army has a viable place in a team. Every army has a good build. And then there's just one that doesn't meet that criteria.
Yep.
Very sad.
Then we have Zinth, who's been a member for 13 months. Thank you so much, Zinth. Thank you for the stream, guys. Heard that Innes Wilson was running triple Malloc, but haven't looked at lists. What would that play like on the board? Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. I believe Innes is running Synaptic Nexus. I actually don't recall exactly how many Molochs are in his build, so I couldn't comment on that. But if you're running multiple Molochs, you're threatening to rapid ingress and splash a little bit of damage and potentially some random battle shock tests. One of the great things about the Moloch is that ability to tell your opponent, hey, there is a non-zero chance that your unit that you just moved ends up battle shocked before your shooting phase. And so anytime your opponent has something that's like advancing out with the intent of spending a CP to advance and charge in the charge phase, if a Moloch ingresses and tags it and just says, hey, take a battle shock test, you could get screwed. Like, imagine if you had advanced a Warp Talon unit and then, like in Red Corsairs, and just a Moloch ingressed 11.9 away and said, oh, take a battle shock test, and you can't like CP it or anything, and they just fail. And it's like, oh wow, you can't charge now. So just sit there until my turn, I guess. I'll be right with you. Then the Moloch comes and charges them after the Tyranid shoot them, and it's disastrous. The Molochs are very cheap wounds for monsters. They're not that expensive. Their combat's pretty fine. They don't really shoot much, but it's a good disruption, good rapid ingress, and relatively tough for its points. It's a good place to be.
Yeah,
just a good place to be. I think the Molochs are great.
I think Tyranids is more like you're having a lot of parts that come together to be something strong and tricky.
100%.
Instead of like relying on 1 or 2 data sheets.
Yeah,
which is
the
great.
Moloch doesn't do a lot of damage. It just does like D3 mortals to a couple things. But you do that twice, then those things are all smaller, and they all get hit by Tyranids, and it adds up.
Yeah, then it's in your backfield, or it's on an objective, and you're like, I have to deal with this. I don't want to do it.
Yep.
And then we have a Slack Onion here. Thanks so much for the super chat. Thoughts on New Agents Codex? I like the idea of an Imperial army that is this eclectic. I love the idea because the Eisenhorn trilogy is my favorite of the Black Library books, and so I'm hoping Eisenhorn and some of the cool things that Inquisitors can do is in this book. I would love to see like a requisition force where you can grab units from like admech and Grey Knights and Space Marines and Guard and just kind of have a cool, interesting mix of stuff. Yeah. But we will have to wait and see what that codex brings. Yeah,
I'm excited for that codex. As soon as it's out, I guarantee that we will have a game and a review up on this channel as soon as we can get them.
Excellent. And then we have a super chat from Warmaster Art. Thanks so much for the super chat. I see your question didn't come through. Don't worry. People have done that before. Just post in the chat what your question is, and we will answer it. I'll look for your name there. Okay. Right. Let's go ahead and...
Let's look at some specific lists, shall we?
Let's get into some lists here. So I just need to switch over. Here we go. So let's start off with a list that I imagine that you and Team USA did not expect.
Yeah,
Adeptus Mechanicus, baby. Poland are doing it. Dude is awesome. Love you, Duda.
I was not. We tested admech. We obviously didn't end up taking it. I'm not surprised that some people ended up taking admech, but we were a little bit surprised by this list. It's very interesting though. So this is Michael Duda from Team Poland, the defending champions, bringing Adeptus Mechanicus, an army that is not terribly popular in terms of numbers at WTC.
Yeah, 6 of them total.
Yeah, not that many.
5 Hunter cohort and 1 Rad Zone. So, getting into this, there's a lot of interesting things going on in here. Belisarius Call is the warlord. Now, Call by himself isn't the most efficient data sheet, but if you look through this list, it is very much leaning on, in my opinion, the Conquer imperative, and that is going to give Assault +1 EP within 6 of battle line, and also the ability to get +1 weapon skill. And in my opinion, Call is a solidly durable lone op. He's more for like mission trickery. It's not really his reroll ones aura. That's not that valuable for admech, in my opinion. It's more that he can be a 12-inch lone op, and then you can 18-inch lone op with the strat something else. He's relatively durable, and he's a really good heroic intervention piece because he hits quite hard in Conquer with all the different extra attacks that he has. So he's in here. He's going to look badass. Then you got double Marshal, one with the Thrall Net to give a unit double its ability, and then one for Battlesphere Uplink, which is shoot and scoot. So there's a lot of move blocks you can pull off. You can get around Overwatch with that. You can just get back in your transport and keep shooting. Techno-Archaeologist for 12-inch no-go zone, +1 OC, so it helps with units being battle shocked. But there's only 2 Skitarii units, basic Skitarii, the 2 Vanguard units, which is surprising because Skitarii are so valuable and give out that powerful battle line aura. 1 transport. Then it is 2 units of Iron Strider Ballistari that are 2-man las cannon and a 3-man autocannon. Autocannons lost twin linked, which makes their strength 9 a lot less powerful into higher toughness. But in this detachment, you can stack AP. So you can go Conquer AP, you can go for the strat, so they can go to AP3, and they have greater volume of fire. So
That's pretty nasty, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to get nasty. Then here's the bulk of it is we got birds.
So many bats.
We got birds. So we got 2 5-man Skystalker units. These are shoot and scoot guys. And then a 10-man unit. So this is an insane move block. You can fill a lot of space on the board. You shoot, you wrap things. You stop them from getting there. You can advance and charge them across the board. It's move block city. You want to get pinned in your deployment zone. You want to not be able to use your key units. This list is going to do it to you. Then 1 unit of 5 sterilizers with the Flamer, and then 2 10-man sterilizer units. And these guys shoot quite hard against units on objectives.
Also Overwatch quite well.
Overwatch really well, and they can stack AP as well and get up to AP2 ignores cover, which is quite annoying.
That'll get somewhere, yeah.
And then at the bottom here, we have 1 unit of infiltrators. They can force battle shock, good mission play tool, and then 3 Sidonian Dragoons with taser lances, one of the stronger melee units in admech.
I think the biggest thing to emphasize as an opponent of this list is how much longer it takes to kill this stuff than it looks on first value. When you look at a Skitarii data sheet and you're like, oh, a 2-wound robot
T4
with T4, a 4-up armor, and a 5-up invuln. But the litany of the Buffnomancer that you can add to these models,
classic admech.
It goes far, right? Because they're innately stealthy.
In this detachment, they get stealth, and then they also get access to -1 to hit in combat if you're in Protector. So you're -1 to hit regardless of...
If that's important, you have it.
And then you can also 5-up Pheno Pain these guys with the strat.
Yep.
So instead of doing it on the Dragoons, you can just do it. Oh, I have 10 birds here. Boom. 5-up Pheno Pain.
If you're hitting them with 2 damage, that just really slows down the math.
Yep.
And they can get AP reduction as well, right?
No, that disappeared.
That disappeared. Oh, never mind. Okay.
That was in the older version. It became -1 to hit now if they're within 6 of battle line.
But still, often -1 to hit, an invuln, 5-up Feel No Pain. It takes just longer to kill than you think.
It's just pure trickery because if you watched the game yesterday I played into Drukhari, is I strung my birds out, and then when Quinn shot the first activation, I'm like, all right, 5-up Pheno Pain, I'll tank this, and then picked off the first couple models. Cool, lone op now. You're not within 18 with the next activation. And there's layers and layers of trickery to admech. So this is player skill intensive. So like I assume Duda has gotten tons and tons of reps with this and is going to be really well practiced in the move blocking, the tying up, the just trickery.
Either fortunately or unfortunately, Duda is one of the best players at the event.
Yeah.
And so you can very well expect this list to perform much better than it looks. Again, admech currently fine, but man, this list is going to overperform expectations.
This list feeds on like Aldari. There's going to be like a lot of MSU kind of T3, T4 body type armies. This list feasts on those armies.
How do you think this does into sisters?
The tank heavy versions, it's move blockable.
Yeah.
Your killing power, you're not going to kill like tons of stuff in a turn unless they're out of their transports. But if the minions are out of the transports, you just pick them all up.
They're just dead?
Yep, they are just dead. So it'll rely more on the move blocking, but like the MSU Aldari list that we're seeing, oh my god, if they get put into this, they're dead. So dead. So excited to see this on the table. I played Duda when I went to WTC. He was playing Chaos Knights. I was playing admech at the time, and he is one of the most like precise and lovely people to play against because he with his Chaos Knights had he had extra bases, and he would literally just stack them in front. Like, here's where the Chaos Knight would actually move. It was not even a question a single time. So I really love playing against him. So good luck, Duda. All right. So that's that one list.
Great list. Let's hit the next, shall we?
Cool. We've got Sisters. So this is one of the two lists that is not Bringers of Flame, and it is the melee one, Penitent Host, I believe.
Yeah, and this is from Grisha, GG, from Team Germany, another lovely player who we love to face off against. And Adeptus Sororitas with the Penitent Host. I just love seeing a different take on Sisters. We know that Bringers of Flame is very strong, and I'm sure that Germany also recognized that Bringers was good. But they decided to bring Penitent Host instead. So let's go ahead and read through what this list has. We lead off with a Canoness with a Psalm of Righteous Judgment, as well as a Ministorum Priest with the Refrain of Enduring Faith, 2 more Ministorum Priests, and a Palatine with the Catechism of Divine Penitence. I believe that's the one that allows the Palatine to join the Repentia squad,
which gets nasty.
Which gets very nasty. Morven Vol, she's gonna have some friends later, and the Triumph of St. Catherine, just great epic heroes and sisters. 10 Arcos, and I believe, 10 Arcos, 3 Arcos. So 2 of those 10 Arcos are going to be joined by Ministorum Priest, one with Refrain, one probably the other. The other Ministorum Priest, I don't know. I'm not actually entirely sure where he's going, but we'll find out maybe by the end of this list. 2 10-strong Repentia squads. Obviously, one of those is getting the Palatine. And then another 5 Repentia, so a ton of melee pieces. So that's 2 big Arcos, 2 big Repentia, 1 small Arco, 1 small Repentia. So 4 big melee units, 2 small melee units, which is great because that means that GG can really choose what level of threat they're sending out. For example, if you see 5 scouts, you may not want to send 10 Repentia.
I don't want to.
But you do want those scouts dead. That's a 5 Repentia job. And the 5 Repentia will probably take care of that. Next, we have a Novitiate squad. That's probably where that last Ministorum Priest is going. And potentially, was there a Canoness as well?
I don't believe I saw a Canoness. Yes, I did.
1 Canoness. I would not be shocked if that Canoness ended up in that Novitiate squad. A Mortifier. Mortifier just gets a baked-in fight on death. 2 Rhinos and 3 Paragon Warsuits. So not a lot of long-range shooting here.
No, not at all. But dense boards exist in WTC.
Yeah, and you can pick those if you want.
And they have a rule where ruins cannot be blocked. There's a token system. Basically, if you try and block ruins, the token system comes up and you're just not doing it. Yeah. So
not with this size infantry.
Not with this size infantry. So being able to just charge across the board. What's the threat range on these? 27?
Okay, so a Repentia that disembarks from a Rhino. I think a Repentia moves 7.
And then you have the
So they disembark
Triumph.
3, so that's 10. The Triumph is plus 3 to move, so that's 13. Sorry, it's plus 2 to move,
2,
so
and then
12.
+1.
Then plus 1 advance is 13. Then that advance is a 6, so that's 19. And then you go ahead and say, well, I'm going to be in the turn of plus 3 move. So that 19 is now 22, and you're going to add 1 to your charge because of the Triumph. So now you're at 23. Your charge roll, one of those is a 6. So now we're at 30. So 30 plus D6 is the max threat range of Repentia in a box.
Who wrote these rules? Like, seriously.
30 plus D6.
What?
I mean, we played a game on this channel where I got my Ridge Runners on my home objective tagged by Repentia top of 1. It's like, okay. I don't know where I was supposed to deploy these. Like, I'm only a 24-inch gun. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I scouted backwards.
Yeah.
And it wasn't enough. It still got touched. Very, very fast. They hit incredibly hard. They are still relatively fragile, but they're not, just going to die to the first thing that hits them necessarily. They're sisters, so they're weird tough. Sometimes they die fast. Sometimes they don't. They can hold on with against certain profiles pretty well.
Yeah, and if they go into a melee mirror matchup, you went across the table with your extra move, you hit things, your opponent now has to hit you back, fight on death.
Yeah.
On a
2+.
Yeah.
2+. It's so good. And he does still have that Volgon package, Morven Vol into Paragon, as his single dedicated hardest hitter, because this list of the damage output of the Arcoflagellants and the Repentia does drop off into certain targets. When you have Repentia that aren't lethal hits because they don't have a Palatine, those ones can struggle against high toughness, especially if it's -1 damage or a really good armor save. Arcoflagellants are great until they hit something that is like T10 or higher, or if they hit something with a 2-up save, then they're just fine. But you've got that big Volgon unit as the final hammer, and you can be a little bit choosy with what matchups you get.
Absolutely.
Because when this list wins, it can win big. So that's what I imagine this list is doing, is it's trying to, it probably doesn't want to play against as many things as Bringers, but when it gets what it wants, I expect Grisha to put in some really good scores.
Yeah, I would expect that. Before we head over to a couple more lists here and answer these super chats, we're going to send you into a commercial from our wonderful sponsor, Rattlecan Studios. All right, so let's get into these questions. We got War Master Art, who says, which one do you guys think is the best Hypercrypt list so far and why?
I've got 3 candidates for you. And
let me know, what are they?
So Germany is bringing a Hypercrypt list that is 4 Catan and the big cryptic. Is it Illuminar's Heiress?
Yes,
Big cryptic. The baby Catan. So 4.5 Catan. And then a lot of supporting trash and Locusters. I think that's a really solid list. France has an extremely cool, and this is almost like an honorable mention because they didn't make the cut, but it's one we talked about. An extremely cool Hypercrypt list that has 10 Lich Guard in a monolith, which you just have to respect that because the combat shenanigans, they're unique.
Yeah, because you can teleport to the monolith and then still charge with the stratagem.
Yep, and they have a Lord, so they can make that stratagem cheaper now.
They can.
That's kind of cool. And then the final one, this is one that I think is going to appeal to Richard. It's also the one that I least want to play against. It's 3 Doomsday Arcs and a monolith and the Silent King.
King himself.
There's not a lot after that, as you can expect.
No, but there is ignore mods. And so if your army relies on defensive mechanics, you're like, don't want.
And it's likely to get line of sight with
very likely
those kind of guns. So
that's a candidate for light boards.
Absolutely. It's a really cool list. It's very polarizing, but in teams format, having a polarizing list is not at all a bad thing. Whereas in a singles format, I would say, that might be a little too one-dimensional, but teams, sometimes you just got to be really good at your dimension.
Yeah, you got to shout out the Necron list because a lot of people went kind of in a wide variety of directions, not the typical ones you see in singles. There's a lot of what looks like very unique kind of stylistic changes in these
even
armies.
Though there's not that many detachments represented for Necrons, Hypercrypt is by far dominant here.
Yeah,
people took Hypercrypt in very different directions, which is really cool. Even after the multiple nerfs, it does feel like Necrons still have quite a few viable ways to play the army that aren't going to look the same, even though we're starting to see a best detachment emerge again.
Yeah, the internal diversity of Necrons is quite high for an army that has a lot of data sheets.
And that's wonderful. That's where you want to be.
Mm-hmm. All right, so then we have we've got Snivar here, who's been a member for 42 months. Thank you so much, Snivar. A very long time member. And
hopefully I'll be seeing you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, are you on Team Iceland? Is he on Team Iceland?
He's a member of Team Iceland. I don't know if he's playing. I don't know if he's a starter or not this year.
Okay,
but hopefully we'll see you there, Snivar.
Snivar is fantastic. John, not on Custodes is almost as disappointing as no Richard or Jack at WTC. What do you think of Poland's Custodes list?
Yeah, I'm almost on Custodes if you squint your eyes a little bit. Apparently I have a type for WTC. But I think Poland's Custodes list is very, very good. It is 3 units of 3 small Venatari. This was another honorable mention, kind of. With multiple Cladius, you have the Draxus guard brick. I think that it is just like the Custodes list. I think it's the best version. I think it's super impressive. If we were to bring Custodes, it very likely would have looked a lot like that.
Yeah. Then we have Mike Pierce. Thanks so much for the £5 super chat. Looking at this data overall, if you were G-Dubs and you had to nerf 5 and buff 5 lists for the next field manual, which 5 would you nerf buff using this data?
Using this data, I think
T-Suns for sure.
T-Suns are the most popular detachment at the event.
Mm-hmm.
I would nerf T-Suns. I think you could very easily use this data to justify nerfing Bringers of Flame. Specifically the Bringers of Flame detachment, because there's such little diversity in the detachments brought.
It's too strong.
I think Blood Angels, Sons of Sanguinius could use a bit of a hit. Beyond that, I don't even know if there are 5 things that need a nerf. Those are the top 3 in my opinion.
Deathwing Knights.
Whoa,
Fire Discipline Eradicators.
There are not that many of those.
I don't care.
There are not that many of those.
They might not, but I expect them to go have a very high win percentage.
I'll let you know.
So I'd increase those. And then for number 5, Wolf Jail. Even though it also isn't seen a lot, but it is just in the singles, it also has an oppressive win rate.
Yeah.
I still think it needs another set of nerfs.
Fair enough.
In terms of buffs, GSC, obviously.
GSC twice. Like what
GSC.
Yeah.
I think Imperial Knights still need something, I think.
They definitely do.
Still need something. I think admech's list diversity is not still ideal. I think some of the changes were on the cautious side, which is totally reasonable.
They need a little more, though.
I think they'll get a little more.
Not a lot more, but a little more.
I would like to see... I personally would like to see a rules change for Chaos Knights. I know they're the poster child for win rate is around 50%.
Yeah.
I just think going up 10 points on some nights, down 10 points, like it's not really doing anything. I would like to see an interesting rules change and then maybe some points increases if it's a good positive rules change.
Yeah.
I just want something else going on with that army.
Yep.
Is kind of the direction
I would love to see, really I want and this is just me fangirling at this point, I really want big knights to do more in Chaos Knights. I actually want the big knights. That's the
direction I was going to go.
I want the big knights to interact with Battleshock if I got to choose.
Yep.
Because...
or just interact with their Chaos Knights.
Yeah. Chaos Knights, I think, are, in addition to being the poster child of this list hasn't changed in 13 months, are also the poster child of, hang on, what's your army rule again?
Yes.
Do you know what the Chaos Knight army rule is?
It's something with Battleshocks.
It is something with Battleshock.
I don't think it's ever come up.
It rarely does.
I've played against Chaos Knights plenty of times, and that role just never really comes up.
Yeah.
Honestly, something like where if your war dogs like kill something within 12 of a big knight, the big knight gets jealous, does D3 mortals to it, and then gets some cool buff. And then it's just
I just think that whatever a big knight shoots, just take a Battleshock test. Anytime like you activate a chaos, a big knight, just make someone take a test. Sure. Just get spooky with it. You're getting hit by a 400-ton war machine. That's 400 points. Come on.
That's the direction, probably.
Yeah.
Then Jonathan Haynes here. Thanks so much for the super chat. Need to sleep. We'll have to watch later. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks for hanging out with us, and get some well-deserved rest.
All right. One more before we hit those next lists.
Yep. We've got Dorio.
I think Dorio might be from Team Israel, if I'm remembering correctly.
That is that currency, yes. So Green Tide Buddies, our team also brings them. We're also the only ones with a veteran CSM and support weapons in my Aldari list. Thanks once again so much, John, for your help. Team USA AODubs are just the nicest people. Thanks so much for hanging out with us.
We're actually lending them some Ball Predators to for their Blood Angel list.
Wow.
Yep. I mean, look, if I painted those Blood Angels, I want them on the table as often as possible. Dorio, we're always happy to help. Thank you so much for the support. We appreciate you.
Best of luck to you and your team. All right, let's dive into the next list here. And this one's a wild one. So this is Olivier Weiss, one of the absolute best players in Europe, and has been on Team France for a while. So he usually runs Space Marines of some variety, and usually it's not something that you see too often from other people.
He loves his Templars.
Loves his Black Templars, and he's got Righteous Crusaders, and this is a list we've talked about. I've played against something like it once, but not any other times.
Yep.
So he's got a Castellan here, which is their equivalent of a lieutenant, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep, the Castellan is the Black Templar.
And Tannhauser Bones gives you access to a 5 of Pheno Pain in one of the whatever.
In the tide you're going to take.
Yep.
That one.
In the good one, the vows. Then we have a chaplain here.
Yep.
Chaplain Grimaldus, who can give a second brick of 5 of Pheno Pain. High Marshal Helbricht, who hits like an absolute freight train and gives +1 strength.
+1 strength. And then he does some fight phase mortals, and then he hits very hard.
And then a lieutenant with combi weapon, which is a lone up.
Yep, he's the lone op who'll give you reroll 1s to wound against an objective and just be a lone op.
So let's look what we have. We have 20.
Primaris Crusader Squad.
Brick of Primaris Crusader.
20 strong.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 20 strong here.
20 strong there, 20 strong here, 20 strong everywhere.
20 strong there, 20 strong there, 20 strong there.
This is my favorite list from WTC because it has 118 Space Marines in it. 118 bodies on this table.
2 of those bricks have 5 of Pheno Pain.
2 of those bricks have 5 of Pheno Pain. The 2 others of them have Scout, And then one of them has Helbricht and a lieutenant equivalent. It's so crazy.
This list has a lot of OC. It's really annoying to chew through these bricks. They can also prevent you from forcing you to remain stationary, I believe is the rule. With
Yep. It has a fallback lock, which is just super dangerous into certain people.
Do not like.
Yeah, if you mess up and get tagged by Templars with the wrong thing and then a 4+ goes the wrong way, it's just a win condition.
It really is.
The Black Templar player, Olivier, is not going to plan on locking you in combat. But if he sees an opportunity to spend a CP and 50% of the time he tables you, why not, right? What's the worst that happens? He's down a CP and has to keep playing the game? That's fine.
Yep.
But oops,
your plan is going to fail. And not only are they going to just rack up tons of primary, but you just can't do anything as your whole army gets tied up by Crusaders.
And Olivier's even in the chat. Olivier, mad respect.
Mad respect. You're awesome.
We are putting you on the clock, but mad respect.
But you're fantastic, and we wish you the best of luck at WTC. Yeah. This is a really cool list, and one that not many people are going to have reps into, and if you misplay into this thing, wow. It's going to be problematic.
This is a bad list to make a mistake against or to underestimate. If you only played against this on Unit Crunch, if you only did
Math Hammer
against this, you're going to make a mistake, and Olivier is the kind of player who will punish you. I've had the pleasure of playing against Olivier. He's a gem, and he's unfortunately also pretty good at Warhammer.
Pretty damn good.
He's pretty damn good at Warhammer.
All right. So that's a really cool list. Moving on, we've got, then we have Liam VSL. He is on Team Belgium, and he's sticking with his Eldari. You didn't know he's been playing Thousand Suns for a bit, kind of switches around some factions, but is back on the Eldari MSU. And his archetype that he had been running at some of the UKTC events has been updated for Pry Nexus, and a lot of other teams brought something similar-ish.
Yeah, and yeah, this is a little bit of a multiple for one, because this list is something you can see a very similar version of on other teams. At WTC, there is a little bit of an element where sometimes teams will talk with each other and sometimes they won't, where you might see very different lists on some countries, and then you might look at two countries and be like, hey, they have the exact same list.
Yeah.
I believe that the French Eldari is the same as the Belgium Eldari. And the French Eldari player, Hugo, is also very good at Warhammer. So this is a list you're going to want to prepare for if you are going to the WTC.
Yep. And it works in singles too.
Absolutely, yeah.
So this is a Ynnari variant of Eldari. So it grabs some really good Drukhari data sheets, mashes them together with Eldari, and you get a really good mix. Yvrine did take the 25-point increase, I believe, in Pariah Nexus, but she's still the way to access this.
But you still just take her.
She went up a lot, yeah. A Wave Serpent here, and that's going to be for the troop unit and/or throwing out MSU units or protecting certain things against indirect fire. Got 3 Dark Reaper units, all with
Hold on. Indirect is dead.
It's not dead, John.
Dang it.
It's not dead.
It's not dead?
It's not dead. It can't be the only thing that you do because it's not quite as reliable, but you can still chip down a lot of things.
Yeah.
Especially when people don't expect it.
Yep.
Howling Banshees, just a good cheap skirmish unit here. Striking Scorpions, 2 5-man units. They're really good for infiltrate and just kind of holding down midfield, doing actions. 2 units of Swooping Hawks. They are also still fantastic mission play.
So good.
Then we have the 10, or is it 12 model?
I think it's 11.
Yeah, it's a weird
They got
number.
that Custodes box size.
So this is the big troop brick, and it's going to get Yvrine inside, and she can heal back models into it.
Very strong.
Then 2 Warp Spider units. You know, Warp Spiders, you love them, but you probably hate them. Then we've got 10 Cabalites, which can get split up by the Venom.
Yep.
And so you could have 2 5-man. They sticky objectives, which means Eldari can kind of play a more aggressive throwaway game against armies that can't go back into reserve, which is really nice. They get to use all their resources. Lilith Hesperax hits like a freight train, especially against infantry.
So good into infantry.
Really good. And then you have 3 units of Scourges, all with Haywire. Really good anti-vehicle.
And 1 Dark Lance.
Oh, 1 Dark Lance.
3 Haywire, 1 Dark Lance in each unit.
And the Dark Lance gets the reroll hit, reroll wound.
Exactly. Because frankly, the 4th weapon probably is never getting the reroll.
Yep.
So if you're shooting at vehicles, you might just crank the Haywire blaster button as hard as possible. But that 1 Dark Lance means that if you play against monsters, you're not completely screwed, because then the Scourges are just 3, Bright Lance shots that real hits and wounds, with the extra Haywire just being what it is. Also, it's a longer range gun to fire and fade with. One of the problems is if you commit multiple Scourges to a unit, because frankly, 1 Scourge is unreliable to kill something. It might, but it might not. If you kill it early because you rolled well, are you going to complain? Yes, if your other Scourge squad can't fire and fade now dies. That's one long range gun to reach out, hit something, and let the squad go back to safety in a pinch. Or it's just also a good gun.
Yeah, it's just a good gun. And when
I
you give
quite like that tech.
Yeah, when you give it that consistency, it is quite good. Then you have the Venom, like I mentioned, and then the Witches. They can also be split up if you really prefer
I'd imagine
that.
you do the Cavalites more often, but I also expect you could make the choice as the NRA player at the table which one you want to split.
Yeah, because Lilith with 10 Witches is a good trade piece.
But Lilith in a Venom is very small and still good trade piece.
True. So that is the MSU Aldari, so an updated version of what we had seen in previous months, fit for Pariah Nexus. Just really strong archetype, a lot of mobility tricks, so all that Aldari trickery, plus you throw Scourges and some Drukhari stuff on top of it. No Mandrakes, though.
No Mandrakes,
but you have Swooping Hawks.
I think Swooping Hawks are just normally better.
They're 20 points more.
Man, 14-inch move and fly.
No, I got you. Lethal hits on their guns.
Yeah. And I think here they're just using the Striking Scorpions as the cheap infiltrator because 65 is a bargain for what a Striking Scorpion is. That is not expensive.
It is not expensive. Eldar don't have undercosted units, John. Come on.
No, they don't. You're right. So despite all rumors to the contrary, it seems Eldar are alive and well.
Yeah, and I think this is a really strong archetype that can both be played in singles or in a team's environment.
100%.
Nerf, but still broken.
Yeah, it's a good list name from Liam. And again, I very much expect that to put up good results.
Then we have a couple more super chats here. We got Super Cuban 3000. Thanks so much for the $5 super chat. What is the viability of a Dark Angels list with maxed out Blade Guard vets, Inner Circle, and Deathwing Knights, melee centric?
I think that is perfectly viable, but likely not the best version of it. Melee units are often best complemented by some other types of things. Even though melee is good, melee strong, those are good units right now and units that I'm taking. I don't think you want to go 3 units, because once you do that, you are a very predictable army, and you probably are also about out of points.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But all of those units are viable. I just wouldn't max out all 3 of them in the same list.
Is it Deathwing Knights for you, Inner Circle, then Blade Guard?
Yes, although Inner Circle have that kind of that reality where they're expensive because they really want a character. Because a lot of the rules center around being a character unit. Yeah. And so they're very much intended to be a bodyguard. And so I think if I were taking multiples, I'd prefer Blade Guard. If I'm doing one, I'd take Inner Circle.
Okay, that's fair.
Yep.
And we're seeing a lot of Judiciar plus Inner Circle hanging around.
Also, Librarian and Inner Circle is another good combo.
And what does that give them?
4-up Invul and a 4-up Feel No Pain Against Psychic. If you saw how many Thousand Suns players there are and you want to make them all cry, that Librarian puts in work.
Well, we saw that in a lot of Grey Knight lists as they have double, triple Libby for 5-man terms. That will tank a lot of damage because terms heal back. Because they heal back models. It's ludicrous.
It takes so long to kill.
All right. Then we have Kwambach. Thanks so much for the $10 super chat. Love the content, guys. Saw the 95% of Sisters lists are basically the same Bringers of Faith list. Strength is obvious, but what's the role of this in teams? Looks just like a singles list. It is smashy, get big score.
Yeah. And one of the nice things is that having a couple singles lists on a team is actually a good thing to have in teams. Obviously, it's something we're doing on Team USA as well. But sometimes you want a singles list that can play against a lot of different things just because you don't know what you're going to see. And so something that's focused is great when you find the target. And sometimes you're like, wow, we didn't plan on this. We just need something generically good.
Yeah, and just something that's consistent that you know inside and out is just going to perform every round. That's a great list to have.
And Sisters is probably checking that box.
Yeah, I think so. All right, let's go ahead and head over to our next one, which is Tyranids, Marco Esteban from Spain.
Yeah, this is a Tyranid Vanguard list. Vanguard is absolutely the Tyranid detachment that felt like most improved by the Pariah Nexus. It got a lot of changes, that and Crusher. And so I really wanted to highlight Vanguard because Vanguard is the Tyranid detachment that I always want to play the most. It's not one that I've had as many opportunities to take to tournaments, but this list, let's just go ahead and read it out. 3 Broodlords.
Whoa.
Good. A Nura Tyrant, a Winged Hive Tyrant, and a Winged Tyranid Prime. Just 1 Gargoyle unit as the battle line, and frankly, 1 Gargoyle is where I've ended in a lot of my lists as well. A Biovore, still great support piece. 30 Gene Stealers. 30 Gene Stealers for 3 Broodlords. That is always being strength 5. That is awesome.
Those are units I've not seen in a while.
It's for a reason, but they have gotten better and cheaper, and that has been an important thing. 3 Lictors, just fantastic lone ops, fights first, stealthy. They benefit from all the rules. 2 Neurolictors, exact same thing. A Ravener squad is a good up-down. And then 1 big warrior brick for the prime, and then 3 Von Ryan Leapers. This list is not taking nearly as many guns as normal for a Tyranid list.
Yeah, no Zoanthropes
No
here.
Zoanthropes, no Exocrines, which is obviously, if you've watched me play, you know I can't turn down a good Exocrine.
No.
But this is all melee control, and it's very fast. There's Infiltrate, there's Scout, there's Lone Up, there's reactive moves, everything advances and charges practically, everything falls back and charges practically. Actually, no, literally everything falls back and charges. It's just a generically good, sneaky combat list because it's so strong at overwhelming people in combat. Those 3 Von Ryan Leapers are 3 more cheap units. So with 3 Lictors, cheap infiltrating fight first. 3 Von Ryans, 3 infiltrating fight first. It's like there's so much cheap stuff around the table. And normally with cheap stuff, the answer is, just go hit it with my melee units. All of it fights first. If you go charge a Lictor, he's going to kill an 8-bound or 2. He might kill a war boss. Like the odds that a Lictor kills a war boss in combat. Yeah, he's precision. And if he's in Synapse, he's just like 6 attacks, hitting on 2s, 8-2-2. A Lictor has a very reasonable chance of killing a Chaplain Librarian equivalent Spaceman character just like that. I have done it before, and I do it again.
Yeah.
And you've got free heroics, even if someone has done it on the Von Ryan Leapers. You've got -1s to hit in melee for Gene Stealers. You can battle shock people in all the different phases. This is a very technical combat army, very tricky, lots of combat control rules. It's not a great combat army because everything in it is strength 14, AP 3, damage 2, and rerolls. That's World Leaders. It's a great combat army because it's extremely fast. It's hard to fight outside of combat, and it degrades the opponent's combat very well. It's so realistic to find yourself charging this army, end up getting heroic and based so that you're not swinging as hard as you want into the original target. Then something fights first and hits you. Then you're -1 to hit in combat because there was a Broodlord nearby. Then you're -1 attack because you're within 12 of a Hive Tyrant.
It's a lot of debuffs. That really is
You
a
can
lot.
get to very funny places where a squad of 6 Mega Knobs with a character averages like 2 or 3 Dead Gene Stores. It's hilarious. It's like, oh.
Do you think this is a more of a counter like Blood Angels type list? Is it able to punch up into that?
It is very capable of killing Blood Angels. It is very fast. I would want to play that before I described it as such. But it definitely looks like it can beat up a lot of melee armies. And I would, frankly, here's the real thing. If you are a Blood Angels player, you have a lot of things to practice against. You may not get good reps into the Tyranid Vanguard. It's a very complex army to play. It is difficult to find someone who has not played Vanguard and ask them to give you one good Vanguard rep. That is hard to get.
Yeah.
But if the Vanguard player has played 3, 4, 5 games into Blood Angels, and then your game number 6, I wouldn't feel confident if I don't have the good reps into it, and they do.
That is totally fair.
And that's a real part of teams is
it really
when
is.
you're playing the weird list, you can still counter the normal stuff because that's what you're going to play the most often.
Yeah.
But if you're bringing a normal list, you can't practice for every weird list at the event. You can practice for this one, but you can't practice for this and the off-meta World Leaders and the off-meta Necrons unless you don't have a day job.
Yeah, I mean, that was when we went to WTC together, and I brought my admech list. Literally no admech list looked like that. Nobody played against anything like that, and people didn't have the experience. And even if they were like, my teammate helped me practice against this, and you played it totally different, which several people said. And I was like, yeah, it is. It's a very weird kind of army.
That was the same thing with my Custodies that year when no one else had it.
Exactly.
I was like, I got 6.
It was funny because we put both you and me down there like, well, who knows what's going to happen with either of these two.
But yeah, this is a very interesting Vanguard list. I love that it has gone very hard into the just all combat, but there's so much trash that those Gene Stealer bricks are going to get to go where they want because there's 5 lone ops. Anything can be a lone ops strat, and then also a lot of other stuff just floating around that can start the fights. The Gene Stealers can finish the fights as long as they don't hit something that is too tall to ride until they hit that threshold. But that's what pairings is for. I wouldn't want to play this into 3 Land Raider Redeemers, but that's not at the event.
That's fair.
So
it's hard to move on WTC boards with your 3 land.
So you don't have to think about that.
Which is good. Terrain really impacts the list decisions as well.
100%.
So those are going to be the lists that we're going to go through today. Obviously, this is a almost 600-page document, so there are tons and tons of lists. There's a lot of creative lists. There's a lot of awesome things that people have come up with.
We could not cover them all. Sadly.
Could not cover them all, so we just picked some of the ones that were exciting and that you're going to see perform, I think, pretty well at the event. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give us a like and subscribe to the channel. All of that massively helps us grow. In addition, leave a comment below letting us know what you thought of the lists and kind of overall, if some of the ones we didn't mention, feel free to post those in there, start a little discussion, and let us know how you're feeling about Pariah Nexus in general. As the stats show, pretty much every army is going to be seen here, besides GSC, sorry GSC. But
sad.
There's a lot of list diversity as well for most factions, which means that the meta is in a really good place. Missed some super chats. Which ones did not get answered? 'Cause I'm seeing those. I'll just scroll back up real quick.
We did the sisters one.
I think it was this one.
Oh, we did miss Red Rum. I don't think we talked about Red Rum.
I see you, Red Drum. I see you. All right. So Red Drum, thank you so much for supporting us here. Feel we were at the same point with Dark Angels as 9th edition, where they are just a stat check. Most other armies, and same problem was with Custodies and their index. That style gets boring really fast. The cost for Deathwing Knights is wrong.
Ouch. Red Rum. I think they should be cheaper. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Dark Angels is just a pure stat check. We'll see how they do at the event. Obviously, I am bringing Dark Angels, so I will hear nothing negative about my green boys. They are perfectly balanced, and that's why they're going to win more than half their games. But I do agree that you never want Dark Angels to be just a stat check. So if we get to a point in the meta where every Dark Angel list is slam 15 Deathwing Knights down, and then that is winning a lot, at that point you would want to see it adjusted to keep Dark Angels interesting. Because when Dark Angels are all Terminators, it's very boring. And for that reason, I'm very glad that Deathwing Knights are capped at 5 strong at the moment. Yeah. I think a 10 strong Deathwing Knight would be horrible for the game. But luckily, that's not on the horizon.
9th edition.
Yeah, that was a mistake. Early 10th edition was a mistake too. But I like it a lot more now. So yeah, maybe they'll end up making some changes where if that becomes problematic, where you only take 1 or 2 Deathwing Knights, and it's not the cornerstone of the list, it's just an aspect of it.
Then we have James Milner here with a 10 Australian super chat. Thank you so much. Hi guys, big fan of the informative content. Just played my first 5-man teams event and I'm obsessed. We are too. Love teams.
Love teams.
Let's go T-Suns. Never nerf my babies.
Well, they didn't this year, so
still one of the best armies since the index.
Indeed.
Or since the original release.
Indeed, they are.
They are so good, and definitely a reps-oriented army though. You can't just pick up these T-Suns, play a couple games, and be like, I'm a master.
All right. Well, I think that we got them all. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Again, if you want to get a little bit more of this wonderful Art of War goodness, if you want some high-quality content like our Jack theories, like our coaching matches, and maybe even some upcoming WTC content that Nick and I are probably going to do, you can check out The War Room. It's a link in the description below, thewarroom.vhx.tv. And that is where you can get a free trial to The Worm.
Yep, 3-day free trial. Sign up, check out the content, and like John said, there will be additional WTC content coming in the near future. So if you're excited about that, definitely check it out. And then we have David Graham. Thanks so much for being a member for 18 months. Great stream as always. Cheers, lads. Can't believe 18 months have gone by already.
Time flies when you're having fun.
We love to have you join us and sticking with us. Really appreciate it. All right. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you all in the comments. So long for now.